The other update we were talking about today, my friends, is economy kind of stuff. It is mostly based around cargo hauling, but I think there's a lot of insight in this whole thread. It's a lot of talking between the dev and a couple other people asking questions about industrial gameplay, not combat stuff. We need some of that too, right? So we're going to take a nice long deep dive into this, probably with a couple of rabbit holes and rants, and see what's being said. Now the question starts out, why does Partilium get another nerf in PTU? Reducing box sizes from 4 SU to 2 SU doubles the amount of time traders will need to load boxes in both buy and sell locations, doubling the risk. The return on investment is 7 to 16%. After the nerf last patch, it hardly gets traded anymore as is, and this will basically kill it. CIG should be boosting return on investments across the board on all commodities. How is an extremely high risk 371 max profit getting nerfed? It is funny that we're still not dynamic. So like the pricing doesn't change if people aren't trading it. It just keeps going down. All right. Now there's more to this. There's more context here. I'm not going to try and tell you that's all he said, but a lot of it is detail and sort of like, here's what I believe you should do, which is good. You should give your solutions if you're going to give complaints. But I want to get to what the dev is saying. Highlander said, I can speak some to the logic and plans behind the changes to commodity prices, size availability, ROI, and profit lines. Most of those numbers are what I focus on in the econ team. I'm also going to speak on these points to a level that a lot of people's eyes will glaze over and need to watch someone else to summarize it. I'm not summarizing it. There's a little bit of salt in that statement. As always, a lot of upcoming content that are in the works for Star Citizen will have a big scale effect on the overall goals of trading, sandbox resource gathering, and the economy as a whole. So any specifics I might go into here is only about the current state of balance for trade, not what they will be once other major features change that landscape. So starting out, why does Partilium get another nerf in BTU? Now, I don't know how much it is worth, but they're saying they get 371,000 max profit in the best case scenario. And we don't know what ship that's talking about or anything. So I don't know how much it makes, but I guess it was valuable and now it's not so much. Let's see what he says though. You might not have noticed yet, and that's not a slight on you. I'm well aware of the current state of communication, information about trade goods and more. We actually clamped down on all commodities in terms of the availability sizes this patch, not specifically Partilium. What you will find is that aside from a few special exceptions like Osolian hides, most commodities will fall into the following brackets in terms of availability. 32 SU and 24 SU. Some outposts can't support 32 SU. 16 SU, 8 SU, and 2 SU. Oh, so they're not using 4s or 1s. The value per SCU goes up the lower the bracket. It's actually intended to be a pain point for ships with excessively large grids to try and fill up with crates that are below their bracket range. We don't outright block them, of course. This is a sandbox and going outside the limits is allowed, but a good sandbox does have friction and makes the world respond the way when you try to push the boundaries of the normal flow. That is absolutely correct. And I think this statement from the skimming I've done afterwards has put even more fear into people and made some not, I would say the most, this guy straight up deleted his comment. Not the best kind of comments and reaction, but basically he does clarify on this a little bit more what he means by the fact that smaller ships will have those kind of balances. So we'll get to that. But I do think that there's got to be small scale cargo hauls that make a lot of money. High value, low quantity kind of things. All right. He continued on by saying CIG should be boosting ROI across the board. And the dev responded, we actually did this in 4.4. Although since it's only the first part of a large increase to sandbox values, it won't feel quite as strong in just 4.4 as it will with the rest of the changes coming out. Most tradable resources in 4.4 now have at least some pair of locations that can get you about 20% discount on purchase and a 35% premium on sale in the perfect conditions. That's not quite dynamic, but that's nice to hear. So if you're doing your due diligence as a trader, in the current state of Star Citizen of 4.4, you should be able to eke out some trade lanes that are much higher than what other people are getting. He said 30%, 35% premium on sale. On top of a 20% discount, like you could find trade lanes that will make you a ton of money. The problem is, if it's not dynamic, as soon as those trade lanes get discovered and shared across the game community, they start to be undermined. And then it leads to too much money. And then it leads to some kind of nerf to that. And we need it to respond more to what's actually happening in the game than what the devs want to push us to do. Or else we'll just keep coming back to this, and hopefully they can talk about that soon. And we'll just keep saying that every month. Continuing on. Depending on how you calculate it, that's slightly above a 68% return on investments, taking any values with a grain of salt. There's a lot of layers of dynamic calculation that modulate the endpoint prices you will actually see in game. And literally every location has another set of values in place that can either add or subtract to those bands. Continuing on, the commenter said the ROI is 7 to 16% after the last patch, which is the best case scenario. And Highlander answers again, it's actually not. It's like, I got receipts. Partilium's locations do have some of those aforementioned modifiers that change the possible best return of investment to a 10% discount and a 25% premium instead of a 20-35. But the reason you still aren't seeing that benefit is that it's oversaturated at the locations. The more players focus on a single commodity, the worse those places' prices get for all players. Oh, that's part of the current working effects of the dynamic price changes based on demand. Okay, so we are getting some demand changes. I know there were some slight changes, but it's nice to see it acknowledged, I guess. So, that's great. In that case, maybe we don't run into that problem where everybody floods into these trade lanes and it loses its value. Maybe it literally does go down in price and people start going to other places. That'd be good. But it is nice to be talking about trading in Star Citizen, and we are looking at actual trade routes between outpost cities, space stations, and different star systems. We're looking at tractor beams, mech tools, and ship tractor beams being able to use to move all these boxes. We're looking at 2 SU, 8 SU, 12 SU, 16, 24, 32 SU boxes that we can use to trade all these things. And we're looking at a decent amount of commodities. Feels good. As somebody who's been around for a while, it feels nice. If you joined in the last 2 years, it feels pretty normal. But if you've been around for longer than like 3 or 4 years in Star Citizen, it's still, to me, I guess, I can't speak for everyone. To me, it still feels novel, the way that we're doing it compared to how it used to work. I know it'll get old at some point, but man, we were just not doing anything really industrially focused for a long time. Just mining. That was just basically it. If everyone focuses on Partilium, for instance, even that reduced potential 33% return on investment can drop all the way to 7 to 8% return on investment. This leads us into the reason that Partilium got hit in the prior patch. This is good stuff to read, dude. I'm really glad that he's typing all this. So the goal for the way the balance between the chase commodities in their bucket is intended to work is that even if one resource is at first the most profitable, if too many people focus on that resource, its profit lines drop below the second, then the third, then the fourth best options. This creates a rolling meta where there should never really just be one single commodity that is inherently the best choice. That's healthy for the game. And it makes the balance between other traders and pirates a lot more of a mind game as opposed to just camping the specifically best commodity. For example, in the 2 SU bracket, the second best option behind Partilium is Diamond Laminate, around 84,000 credits. Before the nerf of Partilium from 190 to 90,000 credits, at 190, no matter how many players focused on Partilium, Diamond Laminate would never overtake it as the best option. This isn't healthy for the sandbox as a whole. It becomes the only thing worth trading, and all the locations you can get the Partilium become death traps, which they absolutely were, and still honestly are a bit more than I'd like. That's the motivation behind why we dropped Partilium to a closer value for its bracket. You can customize the size of cargo boxes as you order them, yeah. I do think though that we should, if we're choosing auto-loading in the cargo bays, this is probably only something that should happen in certain places, but you should be able to get a clear graphical manifest of your cargo bay so that you can specifically decide where you want boxes to be. You know, maybe you're gonna run multiple lines of transport and you don't want to store the gold behind the Partilium because the gold is going out first. You should be able to decide where the stuff gets stored. I don't know when they're gonna do that, but it does need to happen at some point. All right, just a little bonus he had here on the answer. Here are some other currently intended chase commodities at the top of their brackets. Fresh food, tritium and diamantium at 8 SU. Bioplastic, widow, diamond, and gold at 16 SU. And lastly, pressurized ice, steel, tungsten, and Dynaflex at 24 and 32 SU. One of the benefits we want to make of having bigger ships is that you will have enough space to trade these chase goods of higher brackets for a better profit line, which smaller ships don't see similar profit lines for. Making these brackets a bit easier to quickly identify is one of the reasons we chose to shift many commodities like Partilium to 2 SU as well. So that points to what So that's the points I wanted to clarify for why we decided to bring Pertilium in line with the rest of the goods. Now let's talk about the parts where you guys are right. I like what they're going for. I'm not sure how I feel about them kind of defining that certain SCU work better with certain things. I almost prefer if it was like whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking a complete dynamic demand-based structure where if an outpost has not had so-and-so amount of food shipments in so-and-so amount of time, then the price that they will buy those food shipments are going up every minute. And you can see that, and you could say, hey, they're asking me that to give them 18 SCU of food. Obviously, then you're not going to go and transport it with a 32 SCU box because you're just not going to buy it. So it kind of naturally teaches you to not get those boxes. But with this way, it's more so just don't get that box with that. But I guess you can. It's just a chase dynamic. You'll still be able to get different types of profit margins from these things in other box sizes. I don't know. I'll have to see it in practice. But I think these are really great things for the economy overall, for the trading scene, for the industrial gameplay scene. Man, it's been a pain to not really be able to suggest people go and get deep into cargo hauling because you just don't know how deep it actually gets. This is going to get people to focus more on trade lanes, and now we have 3 different star systems with routes going between those systems. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, the massive boxes will be simulated too. You might be wrong. Toe just said something that sounded a tad different, and I don't do a lot with the raw commodities. What were you asking about? People are complaining, saying that the price buff will ruin the game's economy. Do they even know you can buy 12 billion AUEC for $1? One doll hair. Who's buying AUEC, man? Stop it. So continuing on with some things that people have said that he said are right. He said the sandbox gameplay, even lower sandbox gameplay, should have better payout. He said, yes, you are right. Stay tuned for more on this in the next couple patches. Honestly, I couldn't have been able to justify any kind of universal buff to sandbox commodities while Pertilium was still that much of an outlier. Now that it's closer in line to the other S2SU chase commodities, whatever buffs and changes will happen on a per bracket basis and include Pertilium instead of treating it as an outlier of the bracket. So this does fall in line with the mining updates that they've kind of hinted at we're going to see in the next couple patches. 4.4 is dropping in the system, but I do think they're going to change some industrial stuff. He said, if you want to nerf something, nerf these zero risk, high reward contracted cargo missions. To which the dev said, I would just very much like to clarify, I don't like wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm in nerfing mood today. I'm trying not to crack a joke here, but genuinely, it's pretty elaborate discussion for the team when we bring up a need to nerf something, even when it seems like the data shows it's a good call. I do appreciate that he's trying to explain this, but that's an uphill battle. Final comment, all of this leads to very boring gameplay that encourages murder hobos, and Highlander answered, yeah, there's some contributing factors from other in-progress systems here, but we know that this is an especially harsh factor for people mining, salvaging, and trading, since those are currently the most piratable goods, and even those are well below piracy values. He just basically acknowledged it. Now, somebody else came in and they said something angry enough that the comment is no longer there, but he did reply, and he replied to just one statement. They said, we're supposed to be punished into lower tier commodities. And he responded, shouldn't really reply to this kind of comment, but I'll give you some clarification because I wasn't clear enough. No, you are not punished for having a bigger ship. The goal of each bracket of commodity is this. A ship that can carry 20 32 SU crates will make 20% more than a ship that can carry 2016 SU crates, which makes 20% more than a ship that carries 28 SU crates, which makes 20% more than a ship that carries 2 SU crates, which still makes good AUEC, since, as you pointed out, they have invested value into a risk of their profits. The goal here is that the ship that carries 322 SU crates isn't making 16 times what the smallest ship is making, but they are making more. Each time you buy a bigger ship and move to a new bracket, you should be able to pick if moving up and making a better total volume is better for your ship size, or if you should continue to compete at the lower bracket to make the best money. But the lower cargo grid ships will not be able to access the same total volume per haul that makes the largest brackets worthwhile. Even if there's enough total supply and demand that moving 4,000 SU of steel at a time is valuable, the requirements of a grid to really hit that price point is too high for ships of only 100 SU. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this. He's not wrong. My eyes glazed a little bit reading this, but I'm trying to read it for the stream and not spend too much downtime just sitting here looking at my hands. Basically, they're trying to make sure that they don't blow up the economy with huge ships being able to ship large amounts of a commodity that's supposed to be shipped in small amounts. But why not just limit the commodity then? Ship that carries 322 SU crates isn't making 16 times that the smallest ship is making, because they're not carrying 22 SU crates. They're carrying 32 SU crates. It's basically incentivizing people to use as large crates as they can for their ships. So how do you do that naturally? This makes it sound like bigger ships are being punished by the SU size. I mean, I guess they're being punished by being able to carry that SU size. It's not like they can't still carry the same amount of 2 SU crates as the small ship. It just won't be as efficient because you're using a big ship, right? This isn't saying a ship that carries 32 SU crates can't carry an 8 SU crate. It's just saying that that ship is only going to be able to carry as many 8 SU crates as what that business wants to put out, right? It's kind of pegging the pricing more to the crate size a bit. And that's why he's talking about up here how certain crate sizes are better for certain commodities. Shouldn't take a C2 full of 2 SU crates. You shouldn't, but you can. This whole comment is only thinking about farming and grinding to the point of exploits and not how it can be fun. The logic is really dumb. It is overcomplicating things. They need to find another way to balance the economy. What's it overcomplicating? To be honest, I can't imagine looking at a space game economy that has multiple star systems, multiple commodities, different ships, and all this stuff and say it's getting overcomplicated. I'm thinking they need to have a pretty complex system to make sure this works correctly. I wouldn't even say this is enough. This looks like very basic rule making. Higher priced commodities will only come in smaller crates. Loading a big ship full of them will be cumbersome. It doesn't even sound like they'll only come in smaller crates. It sounds like they are just priced out better for those crate sizes. Like you can still get fresh food. I don't know what a chase commodity is, but like maybe you can still get fresh food at 8 SCU. It's just that you make better, or 24 SCU, it just makes better profit margins at 8. I have to think about this one quite a bit. Even hearing all this, it's hard to wrap your head around it. Need to see it in practice. Yeah, I agree. You think it means 20% more per hour or 20% more revenue? The latter seems like it doesn't consider cost of goods sold. They limit them to those brackets. So they're literally not going to ship fresh food outside of 8 SU crates. Okay, so now that's weird. Why would you not be able to get a 2 SU crate of food? I didn't know they were locking them. In what world does it make sense to give you a 20% increased profit when you move 200%, 300%, 400% of the goods? In a world where you have to balance unrealistic economic practices with human behavior, I would guess. As much as I would love for it to work like the real world, it's not going to because you don't have the same risks. So I can see if they have to do things that wouldn't necessarily make sense logically. But I'm also thinking there are alternatives. This isn't the only way to do it. And I would love to see them have a talk, hopefully on some Star Citizen Live, maybe 3 or 4 years down the line when they start doing those again. Sorry, that was hyperbolic. I would love for them to have a talk, though, with the econ guys where they can talk about, would it be better to do it like this or to have it be naturally limited by demand? How complicated would that be? If you want to take a big ship and use that, you're going to have to load the small boxes onto a larger grid. A ship that can carry 20 32 SU crates will make 20% more than a ship that can carry 20 16 SU crates. That's a 15% difference, no? So he's saying 50% more cargo, 20% more profit. It's not a 20% increased profit. That is a 20% increased profit, but it's not on a ship that can move 200% more. I think I don't know where you're getting that number. Here, this is 20% more than a ship that carries 50% less. 400% is, unless I'm missing something. Am I doing math weird here? Are you referring to this, the ship that can carry 22 SU crates? You're going to make way more than 20% profit. I mean, they're saying this makes 20% off, this makes 20% off, this makes 20% off this. I don't know where you're getting 20% profit off 400% more commodities. You're buying 400% of the goods at 400% of the price and still making 20% profit margin off of that 400%. But you're not making just 20% profit margin, right? I'm getting so freaking confused by this. Be limited by the seller's inventory. Well, that's what I think it should be. The seller's inventory and the buyer's inventory would be what's limiting your buying potential. But that's not what he's saying here. You guys talk about the numbers. Oh man, too much brain work for Wednesday mornings. He said, thank you, I'm sorry to get up so bent out of shape, but I feel like we've been having the same conversation over 8 years. I'm frustrated with the economy this much because it feels like people like you are saying the system... Never say people like you or you. What do you mean, you people? People like you are saying the system should be nuanced so people make choices based on their risk assessment and capability, and then we get no tools to actually be able to interface with those systems. Well, that's another problem all on its own. We don't even know what prices are. That's a whole nother problem. All right, so he goes on to talk about Jumptown. It was popular. What happened to Pertilium? I like to make decisions like you're implying, but there isn't enough useful information in the game to facilitate it. That's its own freaking problem. Weed can't even track pricing or like supply and demand, except for the journal. It's no worries, partner. Sandbox, trading, hauling, mining, resources, and piracy are clearly part of the game. I'm certainly not holding it against you for being frustrated with the current state of it. Maybe hold it against him that he's letting it out on you, though. Especially the lack of visibility and responsiveness to the changing prices and availability. A lot of your positions are similar to ones that we have been pushing behind the scenes. Jumptown was a blast for everyone and had some of the best Emergent moments I can remember. Somebody asked, why is there no Jumptown since 4.0? Oh, this might be an interesting answer. We talked about it specifically at those same locations. We even gave it a quick test, but the main issue we have is that post-freight elevators making something free using the physicalized cargo system tends to just mean I buy all of it at once for 0 AUEC and then leave it in my location storage and don't ever bring it up the elevator until I'm 100% sure I'm safe. Another thing we tried was the Osoian hides, which I actually think was gone rather well, even with how insanely limited that inventory is. Basically permanently run with high levels of conflict. More routes like that might be beneficial. Anybody's trading Osoian hides in chat? If you do, shame on you. Then you're literally skinning some alien species that we're not supposed to be interacting with and selling their hides on the black market, just in case you didn't know. Interesting, so he's basically saying we do kind of have a natural Jumptown, but because it's not super popular, it doesn't blow off like Jumptown. And maybe the profit margins just aren't good enough, or we're all just morally great enough that we don't trade in Osoian hides all the time. But yeah, perishable goods would be good for something like that. Let's see what else there might be. So somebody responded to one of his other questions and asked, what is the point of multi-crew then? Let's do some math. 20 times 8 SCU is a raft. That's 160 SCU. 20 times 16 is roughly Caterpillar. I know Cat can load more, but realistically nobody's going to bother to fill an entire Cat. Just discredit it. Caterpillar has a minimum crew of 2 or a max of 4, as per the CIG page of the ship. Never go off the page of the ship. I mean, I know we quote it sometimes, but you're in a bad place if you're using the ship matrix of lies to determine value. If you take the trouble of loading a Caterpillar with 4 people, you'll get 20% more total money, but you have to divide the money by 4. From a basic 100,000 return on investment with the raft will get either 100,000 or 50,000 per players. Caterpillar will get 60,000 or 30,000 per players. Where is the increase here? What is the point of running a cat? Might as well just load 2 solo raft. Can you please, for the love of God, consider not killing multi-crew for once? I feel like they probably considered it. The hyperbolic statements in these questions would drive me actually insane as a dev. I get triggered too easily. The way that they talk to them. Man. It's very internet comment style. It's like we got real comfortable in the last 15 years or so with just kind of saying whatever we want on the internet, because for a long time it was just kind of, it didn't matter. Like social media just taught us to say the most low effort statements to each other on Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, MySpace, whatever it is. But then now the world has moved and the internet is no longer just like a social hangout, consume kind of space. It is a professional space where everybody has an identity and stuff. And people still talk to people like it's an anonymous forum where you can, I guess this is kind of anonymous, but like these people aren't anonymous. They're at their work. For the love of God, consider not killing multi-crew for once. Like, it's not a bad statement. It just loads the conversation for no reason at all other than anger. And it's cool to be angry. It's just these kind of statements, I don't know. I think it must be discouraging. He answers it though, and maybe they just grow thick skin. I know. Bootstraps and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. Like, you gotta be tougher to be on the internet and stuff, but I just like decorum, you know? This leaves a specific place for multi-crew actually, he says, because of the existence of down trading. Remember how I said we don't hard limit the brackets? We just make it harder to safely and efficiently load ships with those goods in a timely manner? See, here he is saying they don't hard limit it. Are you sure that they don't put those things in other SCU box sizes? Because he seems to be trying to say you don't have to use those box sizes. Just make it harder to safely and efficiently load up ships with those goods in a timely manner. Or is that saying we keep them small so that it is? I don't know. I can't read, dude. If you have some extra people along with you, then you can overcome that barrier pretty easily. So sure, it might be a pain for one reason to load a cat with 48 SU crates, even if you have to grab 2 to 3 different commodities in that bracket. It might even be dangerous. Yeah, commodities in that bracket. It might even be dangerous for a solo player and a cat to do that. It could take them like 20 minutes. But if you have a crew, then you can start venturing more into more risky and lower brackets of cargo. Then you should be safe trading on your own lower brackets because you're taking more boxes. And if you have a crew or have hired a guard, for instance, you also have protection against the treasure ship scenario, which would be if you have loaded up so much high value goods on your ship that you become the golden loot box for all the pirates in the system. You are much more free to do that if you have guards, and you can pay them part of the excess value you are getting from down trading. He didn't really define down trading here, just trading in smaller boxes. Also expect that you will be making enemies of all the small ships trying to trade there because you are a big fish invading their small pond. A one crew caterpillar trying to compete and load up at a small outpost moving a few different 2 SU bracket goods is going to get obliterated, partially because of how long it takes you to solo load it. But a full crew cat with maybe 1 or 2 guards, you might be able to do some of that dangerous down trading, and sure, you might need to stop at a few locations to load up, but suddenly a ship of 4 to 6 crew running low bracket goods, it's incredibly high risk, but if you're willing to go against the grain, it might be worth it. I honestly think that these brackets actually make it more rewarding, not less, for multi-crew ships, because the main factor that's making it hard to down trade is offset by having more people on the ship. We're getting into that stage of questioning how much people should be making per hour. That was always a big one. It was like, yeah, okay, you're buffing these commodities, you're making this stuff cost this much, but how much am I supposed to realistically expect to make one day? And it seems kind of like that's where he's starting to push us. They are starting to push here, but I don't know what comes first. The lowered pay or the more risky stuff? Do you bump up the money to get people to take those risks and try out the multi-crew and learn that it actually works first? Do you do something to make it obvious? He's telling us this in a Spectrum post, but how much of this information is going to be made clear to regular people versus they have to discover that through either finding a YouTube video or looking at a guide or learning from somebody on the job? How often are people getting pirated? It seems like CIG is relying on players to make it risky. They don't have NPC pirates yet. Gotta remember that we will get attacked by NPC pirates too. The riskier places will naturally have more people attacking you, even if they're not players. You should not be rich hauling after a day or two. That is true. We're pretty spoiled on being able to make a ton of money very quickly in Star Citizen. This escort argument has been beat to death. I don't even think we have gotten it to the point, like the horse hasn't been born yet, you know? We could beat it to death, but until the game actually plays in a way that I even care about getting an escort, I still don't care about getting an escort. I'm sorry. I will fill up my freaking ship. I don't know what can I trade with? Let's just say a C2. I'll go and I'll put a bunch of boxes on a C2, and I would genuinely rather take the risk of getting attacked than go through the trouble of hiring somebody to escort me. That's just because I don't care enough. But at some point I will. At some point when I feel like it's worth paying, and like I know if I don't pay then I'm in trouble. But then people complain because there's too much difficulty. I don't know, man. This is why I'm not trying to make an MMO. Easy to make money. Way too easy to make money in SC, you say. You just came back after 2-year hiatus and you have 3 billion UEC in 1 week. Dude, what the hell are you doing? 3 billion in 1 week? Oh my God. Wish they would define the consumption rate of various commodities at a given location and then let the supply and demand of any given commodity be determined by it. You sound like you're asking for quantum. Thinking that there is no cargo out yet that makes an escort worth it. Apparently a Cillian hides. Not hiring anyone for anything until we have functional player reputation and reliable social tools, including working in-game communication tools. That's another thing. Pirating is hard now. Because you could try and pirate somebody and you could be like, I want to take 1 box. You could be the most altruistic pirate out there. Be like, you know what? I want 1 box that you have. I will take 1 of your cargo boxes. I will even give you some food and I'll be on my way. But I have to steal that 1 box. You can't even make that statement to somebody because they're going to shoot at you immediately as soon as you get there. Social tools will definitely help. We used to play games where if you died, you had to go through the whole level again. Now people make a fuss because a game has depth. Funny, because that was one of the things he wanted with this game. All right, I want to see what a reply to this statement is. This is from Roadside Cookie. It said, on paper, the bracket idea looks elegant, but in practice, it rarely works out that way. If a solo player earns around 10% per hour with a 192% SCU ship, the moment you add a second player, the math changes completely. The group now needs to earn roughly twice as much per hour just to keep each person at the same return they would have had flying their own ship. That's the baseline, not profit. So how do you discourage somebody from flying their own ship? Needing to do things on the ship while you're flying is one. Making a ship easier to defend when there are more people on it is also one. Building in higher money sinks for people who are flying ships solo is one. Oh no. There you go. There's engineering for you. Let's crank engineering all the way through the roof so that you always have to fix your components. There you go. Nobody wants to solo cargo haul anymore. You gotta have somebody there who's fixing your components. We did it. We did it, friends. Good job. Hire me, Chris. This guy continues on by saying, your explanation suggests loading times get worse, piracy attention increases, and logistics get more complicated. Adding crew only offsets those new penalties. It doesn't create the extra yield that would make multi-crew the rational choice. To justify the opportunity cost, moving to the next bracket would need to produce something like 20 to 25% profit per hour. Historically, Star Citizen's economy doesn't scale rewards like that. This is a broader issue that multi-crew has faced in the game for years. Almost every activity pays better when each person flies their own ship instead of grouping up. Without a structural shift in how payouts scale with crew size, multi-crew ends up being something people do for fun and at a loss, not because the system makes it worthwhile. I really hope the design and balance teams eventually recognize how far behind multi-crew has fallen across the whole game, because there's a lot of potential that never turns into practical value. Meanwhile, you got people saying that they're only building content for orgs. It's hard. It's hard. Begs the question, does multi-crew need to earn the same amount of money? He says that people are doing this mainly for fun and at a loss. I'm more playing devil's advocate here because I do think that they need to incentivize people to play together, but is it really important that you make the same amount of money playing with another person? Technically, if I was going to take a job from somebody in the real world, I would do that job alone to make more money. I would have somebody join me and realize that I have to use money to make it easier. So maybe it's less about the profit and more about how difficult it becomes without another person, but then people complain about the fact that you have to move boxes around. People also then complain that, like, if things get more difficult, if you do something on your own, that makes it harder for solo players, and solo players should have access to everything. It'll never work in a game. People will always min-max. And that's why we can't have this economy work like it does in the real world. Because in the real world, people do things for fun. You take a loss because it's fun. But as people are saying in the chat, in a video game that doesn't happen. So you can't even let the economy work like it would in the real world. Where is the content for orgs? Is Blades and NPC crew not in the pipeline anymore? Where is the content for the orgs? Is Blades and NPC crew not in the pipeline anymore? No, those are both still in the pipeline, NPC crew being post 1.0. Content for orgs, I would say, are things like Hathor, Rock Cracker, and the new tactical groups things that they're coming up with in Nyx. I think this is about all the comments we had. I've spent so much time going over this, way more than I planned on. He actually responded here to somebody who was saying, does this 20% more include the payout of the crew per player as well as profit per hour diluted by loading and unloading times that are significantly higher than smaller ships as well, or do you base this off of just the price? And if you base it off by price only without taking unloading times and diluting payouts between crew players into account, don't you think these factors will still end up making it not worth it to cargo haul with big ships? This is true. Well, I think it's true. Highlander responds by saying, just to reiterate, don't get attached to the 20% more numbers. It's just easier to write that out for y'all instead of saying a value jump that will feel meaningfully impactful based on the current state of the game and all contributing factors to make it worthwhile to upgrade the ship to unlock a new level of income in a meaningful way. That is 20% is a lot easier to say than that. This doesn't include any of the changes that have to come in or modifiers we have to take into account for things like multi-crew options, ship recovery cost, DOAS, death of a spaceman cost, engineering repair cost, or even possible needs to pay for protection from racketeers. Honestly, telling people they need to pay you for protection if they want to keep going right after interdicting them is always the way cooler version of pirating someone. It is. Yeah, so I guess don't get too tied on the 20% thing. They're working numbers on their own in the background. We'll see where it goes. This has been a long enough update, folks. A lot of information on cargo and commodities and economy and all that jazz. Hope you enjoyed.